This is the Decision Point with Anand Nanduri. Anand, we've had a lot of trades. And when there are a lot of trades, we have Anand Nanduri on the show. We get the Decision Point fired up. More trades could happen. We've also had a bunch of NFL teams exceeding expectations, NFL teams that have face-planted. Some we saw coming, some we didn't see coming. So we have a lot to get to today. Who do you want to talk about first?
It's the elephant in the room's been Deshaun Watson, man. We first guessed this. This was
my God, yes. Can we talk about Deshaun Watson? How could you forget Deshaun Watson? Deshaun Watson it's the case study. Like if there was a class, an MBA class, General Manager 101 at Kellogg MBA school or Wharton MBA school, this would be the case. How to not tank your team and get fired because the top equity holder ran you over. How do you politically protect yourself from this happening?
Do not trade 3 first-round picks for a guy that has only ever succeeded in his college offense. That's probably a pretty good start. If you look at...
Whoa.
Yeah.
Deshaun, you've been saying all along, wait, let me get this straight. Your position has been from the beginning that Deshaun Watson's overrated?
Yeah, $230 million, 3 first-round picks for a guy that, at his best, was a top 5 QB buoyed by one of the best wide receivers in a generation in DeAndre Hopkins.
Oh, one of the best wide receiver duos in the league at the time. Hopkins and Fuller was the perfect wide receiver duo. It was like Mike Evans and Deshaun Watson. I mean, what did I say? What did I say? No.
Come on, Matt. We're not even 2 minutes into this. What are you doing?
Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson. Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson. Okay, little Deshaun confusion. Okay. Yes, it reminded me of the Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson duo in Tampa, which was exceptional, where you have a speed receiver that can win deep and, most critically, squeeze the football deep, creating space underneath for an elite outside clasher. You can't lose if you're a quarterback in that situation. And then if you do have mobility, now you can extend time. Now Deshaun Watson's getting beat. He's beating safeties deep, putting yet more pressure. You're giving Mike Evans more time to get separation. And that perfect system played out in Houston to prop up Deshaun Watson. I was heavily criticized by saying that Deshaun Watson was heavily overrated. In fact, I think I had, we have to go back and check the tape. I might have had Deshaun Watson below Mitch Trubisky. I think I did. I think I had it Mahomes, Trubisky, Deshaun Watson, and I was heavily criticized. My reasoning was that he had the weakest arm in the player profiler database other than Tyrod Taylor. That we had just a couple quarterbacks who could not get the ball over 50 miles per hour, and he was one of them, and that scared me at the next level. But it was a small sample. I was like, oh, it's a small sample trap. We have less than 100 quarterback sample here. You're gonna fall into this trap. And I did. I thought I did. I took the L. In fact, Deshaun Watson is one of the reasons why I refuse to take L's anymore. I'm done taking L's. I did it, and I made it. There's so many players where I took an L for years. I was taking L's, and then I should have just stayed the course. I learned my lesson. I'm staying the course on everybody. You want me to take the L? I know people in the chat. Go ahead. Put it in the chat right now. I dare you. Put it in the chat. Put it in the comments right now. Do it. Say, take the L on Player X, Podfather. Take the L on Kyron Williams. They want me to take the L on... No, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to run out the clock on all of you fools like I should have with Deshaun Watson.
The Watson stuff specifically is really interesting because his best years in Houston, they ran a lot of the stuff that he was successful with at Clemson. And I think a lot of people saw that as, oh, hey, they're just catering to their quarterback and doing what he's best at. Well, what we found out in Cleveland when Joe Flacco is inserted, or Jameis Winston is inserted, or literally anybody that has ever played NFL QB at a reasonable level is inserted, is Kevin Stefanski's offense will give you all the answers. You just need to be able to play NFL quarterback. And if you look at by any number in his starts, he's not just the worst quarterback in the league. He's historically bad. It's like out of 166 qualified QBs, he's in the 150s in basically every stat across the board.
No, in all the
It's
efficiency
awful.
stats, we went back through time. He's the worst Browns quarterback of all time.
Do you
realize
understand
the
what
Browns
that means?
quarterbacks that we've seen in my lifetime? Just pick one. Pick a guy. Brandon Whedon. Horrible. Just horrible.
The decision to draft him was one thing. When the Texans decided, hey, this is going to be our franchise guy, then they saw something and then they extended him. That's one thing. But to trade for a guy that's never played in your system and to force down the GM and the head coach's throat, hey, we got this guy, figure out what to do with him. When anybody with eyes could tell you the offense looks better without him, that's the problem. What else are you going to do? You have a $230 million hole right in the middle of your roster. This is supposed to be the guy. This is the guy that you trust more than anybody else on your roster because you're paying him the most. You trust this guy to pilot your franchise, to be the face of your franchise. All of the off-field stuff aside, he sucked ass on the field. He sucks. There's no defense for putting him out there. The fact that it took until he got hurt for them to try someone else at QB tells me everything I need to know. Stefanski sees it. He knows. He's watching Baker ball out in Tampa Bay. He knows. He knows exactly what that front office did to him. And I think Andrew Berry was hamstrung by it too. I do not think that this was any of their decisions. I think it was Jimmy Haslam's. And you know who else isn't getting enough flack for this is Atlanta. You dodged a bullet. You tried to do this. You were going to be them. Thank your lucky stars that the Browns came in and laid down on the sword for you. This is the worst trade in NFL history. Period.
Yes.
End of story. There's no discussion. I don't want to hear about anything else. 3 first-round picks. You gave him a fully guaranteed $230 million that now you've got to figure out how to get off your books. Less than 3 years into him being there, forget about it. It is awful, awful, awful for a franchise that's been historically bad and opened themselves a Super Bowl window. It is just a cataclysmic, destructive decision that will take them a while to rebound from, simply because now they've got to get $60 million worth of quarterback play from someone on this roster, and it sure as fuck isn't going to be him.
Well, that was well said. That was as well said as anything you've said ever, and we've been doing this show for 4 or 5 years. I've lost track of how many years we've been doing it. It's such a popular show. People love this show. Already have people in the chat saying this is the best show, and that was your best take. That was your best rant in the history of the show. I just want to say bravo to that. We gotta put the whole first 10 minutes of the show in the outtakes, just for me getting my Deshaun's confused, and then you going in as hard as you can possibly go in on someone, and it's all true. If just resign. If you're going to be cucked like this by your equity holder, by your Haslam, just resign. You can't be put in this position as a general manager. You can't accept it. You need to have terms laid out when you accept the position that this is not allowed to happen, that you have the final decision-making power. And that if whoever has the equity wants to override your decision, that is an instant dissolution of the relationship, and you're gone. Like, you have to get that in writing. So if we were, again, running our GM 101 class at Wharton, that's what we would tell the future Berries of the world.
I will tell you this too. This is, you have
Berries
to be there.
and Ballards and
Yeah, you're being there last week. So I was there Sunday when they played the Ravens. Something that was jarring to me is there was not one Deshaun Watson jersey that I saw that entire day. Not one. I didn't see one at a bar. I didn't see one walking into the game. I didn't see one in a section we were in. I didn't see one walking out. And I had my brother with me, and we were sitting there, and we're like, how many Watson jerseys do you think we'll see today? Especially because obviously beforehand we knew Winston was going to start. There wasn't one. There are Brandon Weeden jerseys and Charlie Fry jerseys and Johnny Manziel jerseys. You put the biggest embarrassment to your franchise ever and paid him $230 million to be the face of your franchise. And even the people that believed in him are too embarrassed to wear the jersey that they spent $160 on NFL Shop. It's beyond insane that it took an injury for him to be benched. But for me, the thing that I saw that was really inspiring was Jameis Winston can run this offense. Cleveland is not an incompetent football team. They were a bad football team because their quarterback was taking a baseball bat to the kneecaps of anything productive they did. The defense didn't believe in him. The offense didn't believe in him. Obviously, they got Wyatt Teller back, so the offensive line looked better. But the team that beat the Ravens on Sunday, that's the Browns team that we're used to. That's the team that they need to be the rest of the year. And they could not be that with Deshaun Watson, which tells you everything you needed to know about just how bad he was.
Even if the owner loves the guy and wants to give him $250 million and trade all the draft picks for him, even if you use a top 5 pick on a guy like Anthony Richardson, okay? This is what's unique and beautiful about the sport of football, NFL football. The locker room will speak. If you are demoralizing your teammates by not going the extra mile in the film room, in the gym, whatever it is, if you feel like you're not getting the leadership that you deserve, the locker room will speak, and that player will not be playing for the full season. They will be watching eventually. Eventually it will happen. And it can happen quicker than any of us are ready for because we're so used to every other professional sport. You sign a $250 million contract, you're guaranteed playing time for years. It's not like that when it's gladiators going into the arena and their health and their livelihood is on the line in a precious, small subset of games where they have to win or lose in a 20-game sample at most, right? We're talking about your team is wildly successful even if you just make it to 20 games, right? If you play 17 regular season games plus you play 3 games in the playoffs, you're either a Super Bowl champion or you're right there. Like that's all it is. That's it. 20 games is nothing. Tell that to a baseball player. Tell that to an NBA player. It is nothing. There is so much at stake in this sport. And yet it feels like inevitable that a team is going to have to endure years of a Deshaun Watson. And in the moment, in week 3, that's how it feels. That's how it feels. But I remember it in my fab guidance, on shows, we're talking about sleepers, we're talking about fringe players to pick up and stash on the waiver wire. We talked about Elijah Moore, talked about Cedric Tillman, that the Jameis Winston era will happen sooner than you think. It is going to happen. The team will not endure this. It doesn't matter. You can't, in fact, that's the other thing about football that I love is that even if Haslam goes down into the locker room, what do you think he's going to do? Do you think he's going to go up to these guys and tell them to their face, like offensive linemen, that no, it's Watson and you need to shut up? No, that's not how it works with this sport. That's one of the things that is so great about it is that the locker room will fix it. The locker room will fix it. And my question to you is there any way that they can get out of this contract.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to eat a whole lot of dead money. It would be much easier if they could find a trade partner, but when what you're trading for has been worse than Zach Wilson's starts, what are you going to get back from him? It's basically a salary dump at this point. If you get someone to take him, kind of reminiscent of, I think it was Osweiler from Houston a few years ago when they took him on and got a draft pick for, taking on a bunch of salary that Houston didn't want anymore. It's a salary dump. This is the worst contract in the league right now. Nobody wants to touch it. And the thing is, if he just sucked on the field, I think someone would take a shot on the talent, maybe as a backup somewhere. But because of the off-field stuff, there's a reasonable chance that he's taken his last snap in the NFL and that was it. I mean, you're talking about an injury that takes about a year to come back from. You're talking about a team that's going to pay him a whole lot of money to sit on the bench. And, when he's been out there, he's been awful. Who would want to trade for that? What are you getting? Are you trading for the guy that beat Alabama in 2016? That guy's long gone. I mean, we're almost a decade apart from that. There's nothing there. I'm sorry. The NFL career of Deshaun Watson is probably over.
Yeah, he's done. He's done. Like, he should have been done after MassageGate. I would have thought that I thought that was it. I thought that was a wrap, but no, it's worth remembering the timeline that they brought this guy in post MassageGate.
Oh yeah.
They thought they could smooth this over with people. Right.
The worst part of it is if they had been winning, if he had been good, they would have gotten away with it. like they would have gotten away if Deshaun Watson was playing the way, like, let's just throw a name out there, Jaden Daniels is playing right now, there wouldn't have been a word. There'd be no dissent. But because he's terrible, people are out there rioting in the streets saying we want Jameis, and they're right. He sucks. That's the problem. At the end of the day, they're paying him for what he was as a football player, and what he was as a football player in Houston was pretty good. What he's been in Cleveland is god awful. And I mean, it's hard to envision a scenario in which they don't have to outright cut him and just eat $90 million.
I was thinking more about the jerseys. When you're coming into a new team and you're missing all this time and the controversy is hideous, then you're less likely to go out and buy a jersey of that guy. That's why. See, everyone in Cleveland was in wait-and-see mode, and that's why you didn't see any jerseys. Right? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying part of the value of a player is what they bring in terms of brand and merchandise and the franchise value. You've heard this case made, right? We heard this case made about Trevor Lawrence, that Trevor Lawrence enhances the value of the Jaguars franchise. Right? Just as, and part of it is just his brand. Like, again, Clemson quarterback, like Golden Boy Clemson quarterback, right? So if you don't have that brand element, if you're not bringing that to the table, it's 100% on your performance. And you're right. You do have to be Jaden Daniels level good in order for people to start then buying your jersey. That is true. Yeah, that is true. But he didn't come in with tabla rasa, is my point. Right? They brought in a risky asset that was underwater and needed to be resuscitated, but they ended up paying him full freight. That's part of what was so inexcusable about this move by the front office, was that you paid full freight for a damaged good. Right? This was a quarterback who should have been in the dented can bin, and I believe their agent thought that that's what he would have to negotiate based on all the conversations he was having with other teams like Atlanta. And then to his surprise, Cleveland was willing to pay him the max for a starting quarterback at the time, top of the market. And they were like, well, yes, we'll sign for that. Thank you. And everyone was looking around going, remember this? We were doing the show when this happened.
Yeah.
We were looking around going, wait, what? You're supposed to get a discount on a player like this. What?
Yeah, we've talked about this ad nauseum on here, and it's just important to reiterate it one more time. You're not trading for a player. In your head, a lot of times you're like, oh, we're trading for Deshaun Watson. No. You're trading draft capital for the rights to max out a player's contract at their position, which QB at the time was like $55-60 million. You paid 3 draft picks that obviously could have helped this roster way more than he has. And then you made him the highest paid QB. So now not only are you down 3 first-round draft picks, which are the easiest way to acquire cheap talent, right? That's by far the easiest way to acquire cheap elite talent is first-round draft picks. Then from there, you made him the highest paid quarterback at the time in the league, most guaranteed money ever given out. And what happened at that exact moment is you had to find a way to get $60 million a year worth of quarterback play out of him or somebody else, because there is a gaping hole in your roster from that contract, the albatross that is that contract. Now you've still got to do that. And luckily, Jameis has played well. Well, 1 week sample size, but Jameis has played well. But you're still going to have to get $60 million worth of quarterback play in order to be the Super Bowl contender that you thought you would be with him. And this is just your classic case of this is where roster construction goes wrong. They did so much right up to that. They let Baker go, which I think at the time was somewhat justifiable. He had struggled a bit. He had played through injury. There were questions about whether or not he could be that $50-60 million quarterback, and that's fine. But then to bring in Watson and to have him flame out in this spectacular fashion is just it's so sad, because Browns fans waited so long for their team to be competent. And then as soon as they get to competent and relevant and have a spark and a buzz around the city, they make this move. And suddenly a team that went 10-7 last year, starting Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I think there was a Jeff Driscoll start in there. Yeah. PJ Walker started games for them. Joe Flacco. Like, you're talking about a team that everything outside of quarterback was so good. And remember, early in the season, they lost Nick Chubb last year, I think right around Halloween, similar time frame. They made that work. That was a playoff team that they built around their $60 million hole at quarterback, which just goes to show you everything in that building was working except the QB. I cannot believe that it went this bad. I thought it would be bad. Even in my worst nightmares, I didn't think it would be this bad.
They're 2-6. And it's over. The season's over. They can't make the playoffs at this point because Pittsburgh's too good.
Who saw that coming?
Right, that's the problem. Pittsburgh's awesome. They've been playing great.
Yeah.
They look invincible with Russell Wilson under center. They've won 3 in a row. And then they also have Baltimore. You're not overcoming either of those teams. So now you have to be the third team out of the AFC North, and you have a worse record than Cincinnati. And Cincinnati has Joe Burrow. So it's a difficult ask to come back at this point. I don't think it's going to happen. And it is very sad. Though they did restructure his contract. I mean, they are mitigating the disaster. They converted $44.79 million of Watson's 2024 base salary into a signing bonus. And that did create $35 million of cap space. People have a very difficult time. I have a very difficult time understanding the magic, the waving of the wand. Right? We have it right here. I have the wand right here. Okay? The waving of the wand. We can just wave the magic wand and salary, poof, disappears. Right? And now I look at the teams with the most cap space, and it's teams that have either spent the most on skill position players, like the 49ers, somehow $54 million of cap space. That's because they have to pay they're paying Brock Purdy that money. That's why.
Oh, yeah.
But then you have the Browns, who just freed up all this money. They've got $45 million. They're second in the league in cap space. So This is suddenly very manageable. It's just what could have been if they just had Joe Flacco this year as their starting quarterback.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Winston would have been perfectly fine as well. I think, when you look at Cleveland specifically, they're going to have the bill will come due for Watson at some point. They're just going to figure out how they're going to eat that bullet when the time comes.
Well, how are they going to do it? That's the question. Where is this money
You're just going to
going?
have to outright cut.
I'm
You're going to have
waving
to outright.
they're pushing it down the road. Okay, they're somehow pushing it, dead money. When is the bill going to come due? How long is it going to take for them to get out from under this?
I think they're probably just going to take it all in 1 year. They may have to stretch it over 2, but that dead cap hit is going to be somewhere in the range of $80 to $90 million. And I think, realistically speaking, they can kick the can down the road. But at some point, like we've discussed, the salary cap is functionally an accounting tool. So at some point, every one of those $230 million will have to be accounted for cap purposes. And so you can restructure and move the money around. And basically the idea is that a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow as the cap escalates year over year over year over year over year. That $80-90 million won't seem as bad 2 years from now as it would right at this moment. But either way, that's still a gigantic hole in your roster that you're going to have to figure out how to work around. I think Andrew Berry's done a very good job of surrounding, whoever the quarterback is with pieces. And I think, Stefanski, coach of the year, I think he's done a lot of really great stuff there. But they're going to have to figure out, you have to pay that money to the cap one way or the other. And I think their only real out, to not really taking that hit is to find a trade partner, but you're probably going to have to attach a first, maybe even a first and a second to just ship that contract out of town to someone who's rebuilding. Is that worth it? I don't know. It kind of depends on what they look like at that point, but man, it's just, that's such
this feels like the Celtics trying to deal Antoine Walker.
Yeah. It's ugly.
Oh my God. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So guaranteed salary in 2025 for Deshaun Watson and 2026 is $46 million, but because they converted this year's salary into a signing bonus, then that gets prorated out for the number of years of the contract and spread over time. So you take what you paid him in signing bonus this year and you divide by the total number of years left on the contract, 2028, 2027, 2026, 2025. So you got 4 years left. So basically they take whatever they paid him this year, divide by 4, and then they add that to the dead money for 4 consecutive years moving forward. So the cap number for Deshaun Watson, when you add it all up, next year is $72.9 million. They could then convert some of that, right? Some of that can be converted. The salary part, the $46 million, that could be converted to a signing bonus again. But then that $46 million gets divided by 3 and spread over the next 3 years. And and then they do it again. And then so they could conceivably push a lot of this money out to 2028 and eventually have to do it. This is what the Saints ended up doing.
Yeah.
The Saints were in this situation, and they just recently took the bitter pill. And this is what's the Saints record right now? It is going to come due, and you're going to have to eat it. They're 2-6, and they have a negative point differential because you've noticed they haven't been able to sign anybody because they
wonder why.
And they're having to make do with Derek Carr because they can't bring in a premium quarterback and they can't sign anyone. They're letting Teron Armstead and some of their cornerstone pieces leave. That's the cost. So this is going to haunt them
for a long, long, long time.
Day after Halloween. This is going to haunt them for 4 years. Yeah. They're going to be at a disadvantage in a division with Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and whoever in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Like one of the best run franchises in the league. Okay, so you have one of the best run franchises in the league, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and another one of the best run franchises in the league. And you're going to be starting every year down $40 million.
Yeah. It's a tough scene. Like there's no real way to sugarcoat this.
They can't get out of it. It can't be voided.
And the other part of this too is they kind of need to be bad enough to find an answer at QB, because your best way to bridge that gap in QB salary to the cap, or raw money, in whichever side of it you want to look at, their best way to try to get that $40 to $60 million worth of QB play is to hit on a rookie, right? The Texans are getting $40-50 million worth of QB play from CJ Stroud. Washington's getting that kind of value out of Jaden Daniels. That's the only way that you can really make that up. And they should learn from what the Saints did. Derek Carr, pretty good some years, not so great other years, kind of up and down, always in that like QB 10 to QB 20 discussion. And they paid him a boatload of money. Why? For what? To try to be relevant and competent? No, you need to be bad. You need to go find your QB of the future, because otherwise you're just treading water and everyone else in your division has a defined plan. Carolina is bad and they know they're bad. They're trying to throw anything at the wall to see what pieces they have and move forward. Atlanta decided we're going to go in this year and, chase after Kirk Cousins, and we're going to draft Michael Penix on the off chance that he sucks coming off of an Achilles tear. Baker and Tampa actually look really good. That looks like a really solid marriage there. I mean, you're sitting in a division where everybody else has a defined future and you don't. That's the place that the Browns can't afford to be. So this offseason is huge for them, because you need to find either the guy or the bridge to the guy. And if the bridge to the guy is Jameis in 2025, so be it. Do whatever it is.
I disagree with you. I don't think that that's what they should be doing. And by the way, the people in the chat that want us to get to fantasy, we have so much fantasy content on this channel that's 100% fantasy, that are sleepers, that are trades to make, all of these different fantasy football specific topics. Once every couple months, I have Anand on, and we provide front office advice, breakdowns, team building concepts, helping you to understand exactly how the salary cap works and how dead money works and how the accounting works. That's what this show is. So when you see Decision Point on there, just know that we're not going to be answering your start-sit decisions or your trade questions. That's not what this show is. There's a lot of people out there in this community who think this is their favorite show because we're not giving you start-sit advice. There are so many places to go for that. This isn't on it! This is interesting to me. This is one of my favorite shows because this is fascinating to me. If we're not on the same page, you and me, viewer, listener, with what our preferred interests are, that's okay. You can just move on to another show. I give you permission to do that. We're not the same person, and you're not Anand. This to me is very interesting because my position on this is as follows. It would be a catastrophic blunder for the Cleveland Browns to go out and try to solve their quarterback in the next 2 years. If I were them, I would just go all in on Jameis Winston for the next couple years, because the beauty of Jameis Winston is he gives your organization enough credibility at quarterback because he was a top 2 pick, because he was an elite college player, because he's had prolific seasons in the past, yet he always and forever will provide the soul-crushing turnover that locks in losses. This is the beauty of Jameis Winston. He is the ideal tank quarterback. They luck box this. I don't believe this was their intention. I think they would legitimately were trying to win games. Look at the over-under win total. They were supposed to be a playoff team in Cleveland. But now they're in a position where they need to tank for the next 3 years. They should not be thinking about quarterback for 3 years. They need to build this organization from the studs up, just like the Lions did. They need to trade away all their premium pieces that are 25 years or older and start over. That's the way you handle this. The fact that you don't have the same amount of disposable salary as the other teams in your division, you need to turn that from a weakness into a strength, because your goal is now losing games, not winning games. Now not having that money helps you lose games. So Jameis Winston helps you lose games, but he will still sell jerseys. That's the beauty of Jameis Winston. If I had to put it on a postcard, that's why Jameis Winston is so valuable to this franchise. You need to hold on to him for the next couple of years and go after the next Joe Alt. That should be their goal. Find their next left tackle and then chip away, or whatever it is, a right tackle, whatever they want. Build the foundation at the point of attack, and then in a couple of years, once most of this Deshaun Watson salary has been accounted for on the books, that's when you come in with your quarterback as the tower on the top of the building.
I think you just eat it. If it's me, I'm just outright cutting him. I'm saying, hey, we're taking this in 2025, 2026. If you want to stretch it, so be it. We'll eat it. Just be done. There's no reason to push this out multiple years in a window that you thought you'd be competing in. That's the tough part, right? They paid Myles Garrett. He's really, really good. One of the best players in the league. Wyatt Teller got paid. Their offensive and defensive lines have been pretty good. The biggest problem for them is they have expensive pieces. Denzel Ward's expensive. You know, you look around this roster, and they have a lot of blue chip players.
Denzel Ward needs to be traded. This is what I'm saying. You need to trade all these pieces, and this is an incredible opportunity. This would be my favorite place to land as a general manager. If I were an up-and-coming general manager, I would love to end up here. I would love to interview here, and then they hire me, and I'm like, this is my dream. But again, I need to have it in writing that you can't override my decisions with the worst possible trade in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look, imagine that they just re-signed Baker and they have those 3 first-round picks. This is a borderline Super Bowl team. Like, you're right there. Your roster probably looks very similar to what Detroit has. You do not have a $60 million hole in the middle of your roster. I mean, they're not the sad part here is, you know, if you look at the trajectory that they were on, they weren't that far away. It's just you can't absolutely tank everything with one decision, which is what they did. And even most quarterback decisions that you make, you flame out on a top 5 draft pick. Bad, but not inconceivable, not something you can't come back from. This jeopardized the future of their franchise in that window that they wanted to compete in, to open a hole in their roster that they're hoping that quarterback could come in and plug. That's what's, to me, is so disastrous about this. And we talked about this with the Lions when they did this years ago.
Yeah.
When they were going through their rebuild, about how if you just sit there and take what the draft gives you over and over and over again, eventually you will wake up with a roster that looks like San Francisco's or Philadelphia's or Detroit's or the Rams in the years that they've been very good and haven't traded away their picks. When you look at how these teams are built, it's through the draft. You can get pieces in free agency. You can absolutely trade for a wide receiver if you're Howie Roseman and you don't trust your own ability to draft one. But most of these pieces that Detroit is potentially going to win a Super Bowl with are all homegrown. They're guys they drafted for the specific roles that they play for this team, and they're young and they're ascending. And a big part of why they're so good is they don't know what it's like to lose at that top end level yet. I think San Francisco is running into this problem where these guys at the top of their roster have dealt with heartbreaking loss after heartbreaking loss after heartbreaking loss. How many times can you throw your body into the fire over and over and over again when you know you're this close and just can't get it done? Cleveland's got to feel that way because forever they were the joke in the AFC. They were at the bottom of the totem pole, and they finally found a coach and a general manager that could put everything together. Jimmy Haslam stuck his hand in and screwed it all up. It's the worst decision I've ever seen. And the thing is, everybody first guessed this. We're not the only ones.
This is I think this is why the audience is ready for us to move on from this topic, because this was telegraphed from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. And now we're just sort of putting a bow on it. ordered the gift years ago, and we're finally wrapping it. We're finally putting the bow on it. We finally put the label on it. We're ready to go. We're ready to ship this thing. We're ready to move on. But what I would say is, let's say I take this job in Cleveland, okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to the podium as the general manager, and I'm laying this out. I am going to be as open and transparent as possible with the fan base. This is the situation we're in. We're going to be down 30, 40 million every year for the next 4 years. There's a consequence to that. In this hyper-competitive league, the probability of being the 1 out of 32, given that handicap, is close to 0. So let's be real. And they will listen. They're not stupid. They understand how accounting works. People understand how accounting works. They will give you the benefit of the doubt. That's the beauty. And then you have to talk to your players. And you have to give your player and you have to set your players up for success. Hey, we might not be your final destination. But when you come and play for the Browns, we're going to be playing up tempo like the Lions did. We're going to be putting up a lot of points. We're going to put you in a position, Cedric Tillman, to go out and get a huge second contract. It might not be with us because it doesn't work with the way we're structuring our team building. We're going to be more focused on players at the point of attack, on the offensive and defensive line at that point in our rebuilding process. But you know what we're going to be doing? We're going to be airing it out with Jameis. We're going to be playing fast. We're going to be throw. And we're going to be a destination for offensive skill position players. They're going to want to come and play with us.
Yeah.
And then go get paid somewhere else. And you might find a gem that the other team discarded, like an Elijah Moore. And then that player could actually be on your franchise for the long term. That's how you have to set it up. You could say enough so that you're not outright admitting that you're tanking, because that's unethical. But everyone will know, because this is how the sport is structured, the incentives are structured in the sport. Everyone will know what our goals are. Our goal is not necessarily to go to a Super Bowl, because that's unrealistic. But we want to be an entertaining team. We want to be a destination for people that want to go make plays. You want to be a playmaking defense? We're going to take chances on defense. Come here and get interceptions. We're going to be a point-scoring defense. We're going to be throwing the ball with a heavy pace. Come here and score touchdowns. That's what you have to do, and you be open and put it and say it right at the podium, and then let the chips fall. That's what you have to do, and then hopefully that the game is, can you do that? And if you're transparent enough early in the process, can you survive as a general manager so that you get to that point like Brad Holmes did? He threaded that needle just right, where one more losing season, he probably doesn't make it. But you get to that point where we're winning just in time. And so you're going to try to get to that point. And I think the way to do that with your fans and everyone around you in the organization is just to be totally and completely honest, up to the point of you're just not allowed to say we're actually tanking.
Yeah, that you're perfect example of, when you keep investing in the trenches, the way that we've kind of repeatedly told everybody, that's how we build it. And it's not the only way to build a team, but I think it's the most consistently reliable way to build a team that can compete for years and years and years.
Sewell and Hutchinson seem to work out.
Yeah, you know who did that really well? The Washington Commanders. Looking pretty good right now. Looking pretty good right now. And that's after they shipped out Chase Young. So it's further, we've talked for years about how good that Washington D line was and how good that front seven's been forever and ever and ever. And then they decided to start investing in the O line. And oh shit, Jaden Daniels might be something, and suddenly we're cooking. Those are my favorite case studies to kind of look at. The Lions are obviously one of them. We've talked about them a lot. The Eagles are another really good one where, they kind of had to rebuild on the fly. But all of these organizations, I think that you're starting to see, especially on the NFC side of things, because the AFC was so dominant for so long. The NFC side of things, all these organizations that you're watching kind of rebuild their franchises in real time. And then you get to look back on them and kind of see what was the decision that you made that was most critical to getting there. It's getting head coach GM right. Because everything else, if those two don't align on their vision and the owner doesn't believe fully in what they're doing and is willing to stay out of it, nothing else matters. You have to have buy-in from those two, and you have to have buy-in from the people up top that, hey, we're going to let our football people do football people things, and we're not going to try to stick our hands in there and mess it up.
Well said. And we are going to talk about the trades that have happened in the NFL and some of their impacts on fantasy football, as well as some trades we think could happen after this. Now, I know many of you are looking for a secret weapon for your Dynasty League, and I have it. It's called the Dynasty Dominator app. You go to the App Store, go to Google Play. It's right there. It's $5 to download, and then every year it's $5 to load the next incoming class of rookies. You can add superflex, add tight end premium. It's incredible because it allows you to look up players. It allows you to vote on whether a player is a buy, hold, or sell, and then see the market sentiment on that player. And you can compare their lifetime value rating from Player Profiler to their Dynasty ADP at the FFPC, all in the price lookup tool. And beyond that, we have a trade analyzer, so you'll never lose another Dynasty trade again. And in our settings, you can set this is a win now team, this is a rebuilding team, and then we let you compare players. Look at their metrics side by side, prospect metrics, NFL metrics. It's all there. It's $5 in the App Store. There's some add-ons for Superflex and to buy the upcoming rookie class. Every year, you're going to spend $5 on this thing, and it's going to be well worth it. So let's talk about some of these teams that are moving in the right direction, that have built their team well, maybe some that haven't. Just looking at the records, right? Hey, say what you want about the Bengals. Maybe you think they're moving in the right direction, but they're 3-5. Right?
Yeah.
So it's something's going wrong, right? Point differential is about even, but they're doing something wrong in Cincinnati. Let's just go through a handful of teams that are moving in the wrong direction, and not necessarily, but let's talk specifically about the teams that have missed expectations, and then we'll talk about some teams that have exceeded expectations. And I want you to give me one reason why. One reason why Team X has exceeded expectations and one reason why Team Y has missed expectations. So the contenders that are moving in the wrong direction. I'll start with the Jaguars. What's the one thing they got wrong?
Their wide receivers need to learn how to catch, and Trevor Lawrence needs to be better. It's pretty much that simple. He has not been great, and they need to learn how to catch the ball.
The Jets.
Stop giving Aaron Rodgers the keys to the entire offense. You need something that's not just Rodgers running his offense in the year of our Lord 2024.
That's a great point. Some quarterbacks cannot be trusted. When Aaron Rodgers is running the offense, he will drain all the clock, and then you lose a lot of your advantage that you have by putting so much pressure with your defense on opposing offenses. You limit the number of total possessions, and then you limit your advantage. They need to play faster and be more creative.
Yep.
And you can't do that if you're letting Aaron Rodgers run the offense. Can't do it all. We have offensive coordinators for a reason. They're an advantage. Use it. Texans. What's going on? The Texans, though they have a winning record, my perception is that they're disappointing.
Yeah.
Even though they're on top of their division.
Losing Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs is tough, but they're not as big of losses as some of their linemen. Left guard
injuries. It's all injuries. They have an even point differential. Though they're 6-3, the even point differential is the canary in the coal mine for the Houston Texans. But fortunately, they're getting Nico Collins back. They're gonna be fine.
They'll
They're
be
gonna be fine, but it's understandable if you're nervous about the Texans. I am too, but this is just a function of injuries.
Yeah.
What about the Dolphins?
They are Tua or bust. They're totally incredibly reliant on what he can do at quarterback. And the problem that McDaniel has right now is without Tua, his offense doesn't work.
Okay,
And
so a lot of these go back to the quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is a problem. Trevor Lawrence is a problem.
oh yeah,
Tua injuries have been a problem for
yep.
the Dolphins. Losing Tua is a huge problem. But the Bengals, they have Joe Burrow. What's wrong with the Bengals?
The Bengals defense has been awful.
Okay.
Not just bad, awful. Awful, awful, awful. Across the board, it's a personnel problem. It's been a scheme problem. The defense is just bad.
But they let Pro Bowlers walk.
Yeah. That's what happens when you let Pro Bowlers walk.
Yeah.
Jesse Bates is a very good football player.
What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
What about the Cowboys?
Oh boy, where do you start with this one? Just across the board, it's a meltdown. This is a Mike McCarthy special. You know, it is exactly what you think it is. Dak hasn't played as well as he can. The offensive line hasn't been as good as they thought they would be. The run game hasn't been what they thought it would be. CeeDee Lamb's still pretty good, but outside of him, that whole team is just kind of a, what are we doing here?
I think many people would be concerned about the 49ers because they're 500. They're 4-4. However, they have a plus 28 point differential. So is there nothing to see here with the 49ers, or is there some underlying issue that is concerning?
I mean, I think the fact that they're having to plug and play guys that they didn't want to quite play yet. Your Ricky Pearsall's a great example. There are growing pains there, but it's still one of the best rosters in the league. It's a very good team. I just worry specifically with the Niners that they fired every bullet they had in their gun to try and beat KC last year, and they just came up one play short. And I don't know that they have it in them to make that run again. So still a really, really good team, but I just don't know that they're able to get back to that high water mark again this year.
They've allowed, 182 points this year. That's a lot. I mean, that's not like New Orleans level.
No,
right?
Yeah.
But that to put that in context, that's only 16 more points than that's only 16 less points than Dallas is allowed.
Yeah. I mean,
so
they got to clean up some things on that side for sure. But I mean, I have faith. It's the Niners. They'll get a lot of stuff figured out. I just don't think that this 2024 team is as good as 2023's was.
But look around the NFC, though. I mean, you've got Washington and Philadelphia on top of the NFC East. Of course, you've got Detroit, Green Bay on top of the North, but also Minnesota. They have a plus 51 point differential. Right? So there's not that many teams that they're going to be competing with. You could easily see, in fact, their point differential is strikingly similar to the Philadelphia Eagles. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be between the Eagles and the 49ers who faces the Lions in the NFC Championship game. Who do you got? You got Eagles or you got 49ers?
If I had to take my pick right now, I'm taking the Eagles just because their path is so easy. Look at the Eagles' rest of season schedule. This is one of your look ahead.
Okay, yeah, they're going to be at home.
Look at the Eagles' end of season schedule from now to the end of the season, and you'll see why. Like, these are the little things, right? Jalen Hurts MVP. We've talked about hand-in-hand odds for things. Jalen Hurts to win MVP, if you go look at the schedule, is way mispriced. I can't remember what the number is off the top of my head.
We talked about that on the Mind of Mansion show with Evan Ringler. Absolutely, that was actually someone in the chat. I forgot the name. Oh, I wish we could remember. If you're in the chat now, please speak now, because you actually brought that up. Person X in the chat brought this up on the Mind of Mansion show. That is the crazy, insane value in the betting markets right now. Is Jalen Hurts to win MVP, because the schedule is as follows: Jacksonville at home, at Dallas, Washington at home, at Los Angeles, the Rams. Then they're at Baltimore. Then they have Carolina at home. They've got Pittsburgh at home. Then they go to Washington. Then they have Dallas at home, and then they have the Giants at home.
Yeah.
Hurts is plus 2,000. It's Chiwan 1. Chi11 is back in the chat. God, we have such a great fan base, a great audience. Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate you. And hey, remember, if you like the show, hit the like button. Really helps us, get the show out to as many people as possible. Subscribe if you can. You're not gonna regret it. There's super interesting, helpful fantasy advice shows every single day on this network. And then you also have these types of shows, which are just me having the show I've always wanted to do and get to do it, in the off season every couple weeks and during the season once a month. It just indulging, my inner general manager desires. So I appreciate all members of the audience sticking with us. The teams that are exceeding expectations right now, why are the Broncos so good?
Their defense is excellent. So I think
They're
they
the
have
best
the
defense
best
in the NFL. It is, right?
Yeah, they have the best corner trio in the league right now. Vance Joseph is doing all kinds of crazy stuff up there. It's kind of awesome to watch.
They have a better point differential than Kansas City.
Yeah, dude, that defense is very real. If I know it's not the most aesthetically pleasing brand of football, it doesn't look like the Lions. But man, that defense is so good, and the offense is effective. That's all you can say. They're very complimentary football team, and the defense is doing the heavy lifting, man. But Bo Nix's rushing ability, who thunk it?
All the points are being scored in the AFC North, and no points are being scored in the AFC West.
Yeah.
Like, this is opposite world. This is incredible. This is what I love about the NFL. You never know. It's like what you thought was true is never true. And what was true yesterday is true today. Amazing. The Bills, why are they good? What's happening? They're surging.
It's Josh Allen being Josh Allen. I think a lot of people kind of overlooked just how good he is, but they've also found a run game. And, the way that they use those two tight ends in Kincaid and Knox can't be understated. They're a matchup nightmare for people. And the fact that they acquired Amari Cooper, you talk about just the perfect addition to a team.
Okay,
beautiful.
So the Amari Cooper deal, that was of all the wide receivers that were acquired recently, we've got Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson. Okay. Amari Cooper was acquired for a third rounder and a late round pick swap. Okay. Devontae Adams was acquired for a conditional third rounder. Just a conditional third rounder. Okay. DeAndre Hopkins was acquired for a conditional fourth rounder. Whoa, bargain. But the bargain of all was this Deontay Johnson trade. I mean, you're wondering, well, how could Baltimore possibly think that they need Deontay Johnson when they have like Deontay Johnson 2.0 in Zay Flowers? Imagine Deontay Johnson, but better in every way. That's Zay Flowers. They already have that guy. Why are you going out and acquiring Deontay Johnson? Oh, that's because they got him for nothing. For a swap of 5th and 6th round picks. That was what was coming back on the other side. Was, hey, we get a 5th rounder, we give you a 6th rounder. That's it. They gain like 35 spots in the draft. That was all it took.
It's not even going to be 35 spots because Baltimore is going to be near the back half of the 5th round, and they're going to be right up at the top of the 6th round. They could be back-to-back. Baltimore wins a Super Bowl. Carolina is the worst team in the league. They may have moved up one draft slot.
Shut up. Shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, no one's beating the Lions, but shut your mouth. That is wow. That is hilarious.
It's in the realm of possibility. Like, it's not like Baltimore winning the Super Bowl would be the most shocking thing we've ever seen. It's a good football team.
It's a great football team.
Yeah.
I mean, they're certainly the best 5-3 team in the league right now. Of these 4 trades, which was the best trade?
to me, I think it's Amari Cooper specifically because of what he does that they didn't have. The rest of them felt like the Devontae to the Jets thing. I think we can kind of throw out. That's basically, you could have done that in the offseason. They just waited for X amount of time. Why, I don't know.
I mean, that was talked about for more than a year before it actually happened.
Devontae or Deontay Johnson was just value. I think they were just like, hey, Carolina's selling parts. We'll take you. Sure, why not?
A flash sale. It was just like an online flash sale, like it just an impulse buy.
Hopkins was more of a need because of injury. It's not like their roster was deficient of wide receiver talent at the beginning of the year, but they've just gotten so banged up that having that guy is going to help Pat do Pat things. The offense there hasn't looked great yet, but looked much better this past week. Shocking.
Has Patrick Mahomes ever had an outside clasher that as a profile anything like DeAndre Hopkins?
Not really.
Whenever I think of his receivers, I think of Mecole Hardman,
Tyreek. You think of like
Tyreek Hill before him,
Sammy Watkins. Like
Sammy Watkins does not have a game.
No.
Like DeAndre Hopkins, he's more of a between the hashes game.
Yeah, he's never had one of those. No,
he's never had like a technician on the outside.
No, and that to me is what I thought was so interesting about Buffalo acquiring Amari Cooper is he's not the sexiest wide receiver in the world, but you want a 1-to-1 replacement for all the things that Stephon Diggs does well. That's it. Just
well, no, I disagree with you on that a little bit because Stephon Diggs is better in the context of a timing-based offense.
Yeah.
And I think that he was great. Stephon Diggs is a great receiver. You're going to be successful no matter who your quarterback is. If your quarterback is Kirk Cousins, if your quarterback is Josh Allen, if your quarterback is CJ Stroud, you're going to be successful if you're Stephon Diggs. Okay? Who's best comparable to Stephon Diggs right now in his prime? Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed's going to be successful no matter who his quarterback is. Okay? If it's Malik Willis this week, he's going to be successful. If it's Jordan Love, he's going to be successful. You're always going to be successful if you have that skill set. You can win at the line of scrimmage. You can win deep. You can win everywhere. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Amari Cooper is not a timing-based player. In fact, he has famously failed. Who was the one coach that could not get anything out of Amari Cooper? John Gruden. And what does John Gruden preach? Right? 3-step drop, throw to a spot. 3-step drop, throw to a spot. That's not Amari Cooper's game. Amari Cooper is, I'm going to go out there, run 5 yards, and I'm going to,
he's a very creative receiver.
Right? I'm going to. Right?
Yeah, he has a lot of creativity in his route stuff.
I mean, he's going to jab step, and he's going to shoulder drop, and he's going to do and you're not going to know where the hell he's going. And the next thing you know, he's over here. Right? And then but for a quarterback who's back there improvising anyway, is just taking shotgun snaps and surveying the field and hoping someone gets open. If it's backyard football, this is perfect. He is the backyard wide receiver, and Josh Allen is the backyard quarterback. I think it's so perfect. And then you have a barbecue and you have a tailgating. Think about the Bills. They're the best tailgaters. They have people that could jump off of vans onto tables. Don't they do that in the parking lot?
Oh yeah, they do.
Isn't that what they do? So, I mean, if you're having a barbecue and you want to go outside and you have to have the barbecue, you have the brats and the hamburgers, and then you go inside and you watch playing football in the backyard. That's it. That's why it's such an incredible skill match. I actually think this is a better skill match than even Stephon Diggs was, and you're not going to have a better buying opportunity than right now, where you come off a game where Amari Cooper had 1 catch for 3 yards, and Keon Coleman has a secondary breakout game, right? Second big game for Keon Coleman. Khalil Shakir erupts out of the slot. You're thinking, wow, we got our Dalton Kincaid touchdown because every tight end in the league scored a touchdown last week.
Yeah, they did.
At this point now, someone who has Amari Cooper, they're like, oh man, this is a great sign. I'm going to get value out of Amari Cooper. This wasn't a bad draft pick after all. Now they're doubting themselves. It's a natural thing to doubt yourself. You doubt the strength of your hand at this point. Things are not working out 100% the way you wanted. Sure, you got the touchdown last week, like the week before last, but so far in Buffalo, it hasn't been this raging success story for Amari Cooper. I'm telling you, he is going to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy the rest of the way. A top 12 wide receiver. You need to get him. Now is the time to trade for him because the skill match is just so perfect. I mean, I can imagine like Josh Allen. Think about if you're Josh Allen. What a perfect situation it is. You could drop a play for Keon Coleman, and more often than not, the defense is going to find a way to erase Keon Coleman. It's not that hard. Okay? He's going to be bracketed. Something's going to happen. He's going to not get the separation along the sidelines you were hoping for. Okay, you look over at Keon Coleman, big play's not there, right? Now you've got Dalton Kincaid down the seam. You've got Khalil Shakir on one side on some horizontal route. And then you've got in the intermediate zone in the field, all by himself, Keon Coleman has cleared out. And there's Amari Cooper. You're rolling out. You've looked at one guy, not there. Kincaid down the seam, not there. Oh, shit, I got to make a decision. Am I going to run this? Am I going to pull it down? What do I got to do? What am I going to do? Oh, there's Amari Cooper. Whoosh, boom. This is what I'm talking about. And then it sets up double moves for him as well. That whole thing sets up double moves where now you've got the pump fake on the rollout, and then Amari Cooper goes up the sideline. Now it's a 40-yard catch.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there wasn't a team that was in contention that needed a true number 1 more than Buffalo did. You could argue KC, but Baltimore made not number 1s work forever. I think Buffalo was trying to relearn how to live without that true outside X wide receiver. I think they tried to jam Keon Coleman into that role. Good football player, but he's not that. It's not. He's not going to be your true number 1 running a full route tree from the X and, actually playing the position the way that you'd want it played. But Amari Cooper can do that. And now you've got him. Now you've got Knox and Kincaid. You've got James Cook. You've got Shakir. You've got Coleman. There are just so many different weapons now that you have that at some point, someone's going to lose a game doing this for sure. At some point, your defensive coordinators are just going to pull their hair out because you're going to find a way to cover almost all of them. And then Josh Allen will pull his usual magical bullshit, and it will be a 60-yard touchdown anyway. Because even when you're wrong, even when you're right, you're wrong as a defensive coordinator playing against Josh Allen. Fun times. Don't know how they sleep at night.
They had to pay a little more to get Amari Cooper. No conditionality, but was worth it. Now, the Vikings, how are they doing it?
This is Kevin O'Connell's system. I think it's very similar to Stefanski's, but they're making life for Sam Darnold so easy. When you talk about the most underrated players in the league, our jobs functionally are to watch almost every game, every week, and give you insights and analysis on what we see. What I see is that Christian Darrisaw is one of the best football players in the NFL. And I know they just lost him for the season. But a big part of why they looked the way that they did was 71 was out there absolutely assaulting folks. He's one of the best linemen in the league. We talked about it years ago when they drafted him. We were super thrilled about the draft pick. But he's been phenomenal. Sam has avoided the disastrous mistakes at QB. And they've just got dudes, man. Justin Jefferson's unbelievable. They're going to get Hawkinson back this week, I think. And I mean, look, Aaron Jones is still doing Aaron Jones things. Yeah, everybody's like, oh, he's getting older. He's getting older. He's getting older. Still pretty good.
It's a lightly used race car there, and their defense has only given up 17 more points than the Denver Broncos. So that has been the key. And whenever you lose your cornerstone left tackle, that can be an absolute death knell.
Well, if you look at
I am not hopeful. I am not hopeful. They're in a division with the Lions and the Packers, and the Bears have a winning record. I do not like their chances losing Christian Darrisaw. He's that important. He's that big of a deal. And that's why, if I'm the Cleveland Browns, my number one priority is just trying to get as many shots at drafting a Christian Darrisaw type player. No matter how strong your offensive line is now, you're a year away from it getting completely wiped out by injuries. And you could always trade those guys. I mean, remember one of the big trades that went down years ago that we criticized, one of the first trades that I think Evan Silva and I really went in on, was the Laramie Tunsil trade, where they traded 3 first-round draft picks for Laramie Tunsil. Well, that's what you can do when you hit on a cornerstone left tackle. They have a value of a franchise quarterback, but they have a longer lifespan, and you need to get the left tackle in place first. Then you can go and get your quarterback, and sometimes that quarterback is not necessarily from the draft. Sometimes you can do it with their Baker Mayfield or a Jared Goff, as we see with the Lions. Who else? Who else are we looking at? We're looking at the Steelers. The Steelers. Oh, and by the way, before we get into the Steelers, don't ever trade 3 first-rounders. Don't ever do it. It's never good. No good can come of it. You have to trade the third round. You have to trade the first-round picks, and then you have to sign the player inevitably to one of these bloated long-term contracts. The value of the picks plus the contract is never worth it. It's not possible for a player to be worth it. It's not worth it. It's not. It never is. It never will be.
The guys that are worth that return, your Patrick Mahomes, your Josh Allens of the world, will never be available for any price. They're not available for a price that you can pay. And there's a reason they're not available. There's a reason Deshaun Watson was able to be had for $230 million and 3 first-round picks. Somebody had to be suckered into actually paying the price, and the Browns did it.
What about 2 first-round picks? Would you ever give up 2 first-round picks?
Player would have to be exceptional, and you would have to know exactly what you're getting out of them. That's kind of the threshold on where, if you're getting a truly transcendent, the word generational is used way too often, but if you're getting like a Myles Garrett level player, sure. Other than that, no.
But you can never be sure. That's the problem. Here's the problem. Here's why I believe that is never a good idea. Because you're either dealing in massive uncertainties of a prospect, and we've seen top 5 picks bust.
Yeah.
Like, there's a recent top 5 pick that's trending towards busting right now. His name's Anthony Richardson. Right? And there are whispers around Anthony Richardson that Anthony Richardson's favorite activity is not football. And that is becoming a problem. Just a whisper campaign. Just it's what I've heard. And that is the only explanation that makes any sense to me. Because if he does have the loyalty of the locker room because he's leading by example, they would absolutely persevere through these struggles. But if he does not have the support of his teammates because he's not right there with them in the film room and in the gym, then when your performance lags, you lose their support immediately, and then you've got key players that are lobbying against you, and that's how you get flipped very quickly, and now you're watching from the sidelines, and it's only been a couple games since you got back healthy, but you're like, what just happened? I thought I was improving. I thought, what happened? And they're like, well, no one wants to play with you, dude. And this is a football team, and locker rooms speak, and the coaches in the front office have to listen in this particular sport, unlike other sports. So if you're going to be trading for an established veteran, then you have information already from the team that has spent all of this time with him in the film room and in the locker room. The information you have from that team that you're gathering is they want to put him on the block. So there's this great paradox of you're acquiring a player that another team is willing to let go of. That right there is the biggest red flag of all. So if it's an established veteran, you're buying a player that has the biggest red flag of all. And then if you're making this trade for a prospect, all prospects, have a relatively high bust rate compared to established players. After a couple of years in the league, we knew Myles Garrett was a stud. Coming into the league, he looked like a stud, certainly, but there were no guarantees.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that reason, it essentially never makes sense unless it's the most extreme circumstance you could ever imagine, that I can't even imagine, that you would trade even 2 first-round picks. You just don't want to be in that business. You want to be in the business of acquiring 2 first-round picks. And if 3 first-round picks are on the table, well, then you're definitely on the acquiring side of those first-round picks. And if you could make that happen, then you're a genius.
Yeah, the value that you get from a first-round pick isn't just the player, right? The fact that Minnesota drafted Christian Darrisaw is awesome. It's really, really cool. And now they get, what a player. Awesome left tackle. It sucks that he got injured. But the value of drafting a really good player like Christian Darrisaw at a premium position there isn't just that you get the player, it's that you get him at such a dramatic discount for 5 years relative to what players comparable to him would get on the open market. You get basically a 75-80% discount on a left tackle. You get almost a 90% discount on a quarterback. You're getting such massive value if those first round picks that you're spending turn into good players at those positions, that there is some validity to the idea that if you're taking quarterbacks in the first round, like if you're ready to win and you're just firing away on quarterback, you draft a bust. Okay, draft another one. Take another one. Because at some point that will pay off. And you saw it. The best example for me is Arizona. They drafted Josh Rosen. 1 year in, they had the 101 and they were willing to hit the reset button and take Kyler Murray. Just 1 year. They didn't even get a full season of him starting. After 1 year, they said, this is not what that is. I'm willing to take the risk on this 101 with Kyler Murray. We'll ship out Josh Rosen. So be it. I don't think most franchises would make that decision. And you're starting to see, I think Kevin Cole threw out something this week or 2 weeks ago I thought was super interesting. It's, when do we accept that Jaden Daniels is better than Caleb Williams? Like, where is that delta where at some point you were just accepting CJ Stroud is better than Bryce Young? But we have so much baked in analysis on the draft capital and our pre-draft thoughts and the situations that they lasted into, right?
When you had people that had Jaden Daniels ranked ahead of Caleb Williams pre-draft anyway.
Yeah. And so when do you switch your opinion?
For them,
if you're a Caleb Williams guy,
there's no Bayesian process. Their priors have been confirmed.
Yeah. And so your opposite side of this, very simply, is
to me, that's not that interesting. Right? To me, it's, when does Bo Nix exceed Caleb Williams?
Ooh. Wow.
That's the more interesting question. Right?
I'll have to spend some time with that. I don't know. I haven't looked at that in that context yet. That's a really interesting spot. Yeah.
Right? Like that's interesting. Okay. I have a question. This is for Dynasty. We're having this discussion right now at Player Profiler. This is a very difficult question. Everybody in the Player Profiler audience, are you ready for a difficult question? And every other YouTube host, podcast host, they will say, I want to hear your thoughts in the chat, and they don't mean it. They're lying. It's one of the more disingenuous statements in the history of the internet is, I want to hear your thoughts in the chat. Because I can promise you, they never do. Except this one time. This one time, I actually do want to hear your thoughts in the chat. In Dynasty, at what point would you rather have what's in the box in Michael Penix over what we know is currently struggling in Anthony Richardson?
Oh, shit.
It's not easy.
Oh my God.
It's not an easy question, because one guy we know is Josh Allen level physically gifted. He's also Trey Lance level physically gifted. And the difference is actually not that great, right? It's a thin thread. The beauty of this sport, which again is different than other sports, is that if you were at the pro day, I can promise you that you wouldn't know who's better, Trey Lance or Josh Allen. You wouldn't know, right? And you might go to the Anthony Richardson pro day and you might think that this is the best quarterback of all time. And yet in a game environment, things can break down for some players where other players are absolutely thriving. And it's difficult to understand exactly what's happening. In fact, even if you ask certain players and ask their coaches, they don't even understand it. It's not even that clear. And so for me, the quintessential dichotomy in my lifetime, of my history in this business, is at this very moment, would you take Michael Penix or would you take Anthony Richardson? Because we have a lot more information about Anthony Richardson in the NFL, and it's not great. Michael Penix is technically, even though he was drafted a year later, he's years older than Anthony Richardson.
God, that's so hard.
But he was a much better thrower of footballs in his final year at Washington, albeit with much better receivers than Anthony Richardson ever had at Florida. And, Penix is never going to be the running quarterback that Anthony Richardson is. But it's like I said, it's much easier to say, I'll take Drake May over Anthony Richardson right now. Like, I've already seen Drake May play. He actually reminded me of Josh Allen when he played. And you know what? I've seen enough. I'd rather have May than Richardson. That's a much easier decision to make, one way or the other, however you're going to think about it. It's just a much easier decision to make. With this lack of information that we have really on both sides, because we don't know how committed the Colts are to Anthony Richardson at this point. We really don't know. We only have these whispers. And we don't know when Michael Penix is going to play and what he's going to do, how he's going to play. Will he be good? Will he be bad? Will he be efficient? I don't know. Will he turn the ball over? I don't know. We'll find out together. We're all going to find out together. But this is something I do genuinely want to know the thoughts of the audience in the comments with that one.
Yeah.
And
I get
if I can tell you, if I'm dealing with this right now as a Colts general manager, I'm trying to move on. Like, I would ideally like to move on. This is a very bad signal. It's incredible. There are a lot of quarterbacks that go through their entire life and they never find themselves in this situation that Anthony Richardson has found himself in. Yet there are some that have a whole second life, a whole second career after being benched, like Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield. It's not clear. Like, is he Carson Wentz? Is he just broken? Or can he be rehabilitated? We'll see. I don't know what's going to happen. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating thing. But to me, as a general manager, if I could get anything close to, let's say, if I could just get 50 cents on the dollar for Anthony Richardson at this point, I would take it.
I think you're the best example for me of like a QB resurrecting their career is Geno Smith. I think that's kind of much more the profile of guys that actually get it done. Jared with the Lions obviously had a team that was built and they had so much draft capital and they were able to build that the right way. Baker kind of stepped into a team that was rebuilding a little bit post Brady, but they had a lot of really, really good pieces. Geno stepped into Seattle and looked like a totally different QB than he's looked anywhere else. Anthony Richardson, for me, he is the mystery box, right? It's the mystery box of Michael Penix. I think it's really the mystery box that is Anthony Richardson. Are we ever going to see that parabolic upside that we know exists? We know it's there.
We know it's there.
We know that there is upside there with Anthony Richardson. Will we ever see it? Or is he forever going to be a what's in the box guy? Whereas Penix, at least even in college, you could see the polish of an NFL QB there. And a lot of that is because I think he was there longer. But you're 10 games into Anthony Richardson's NFL career. I think 7 of them he's finished, something like that. And he's taken, at 13 starts at Florida, you're talking about 10 in the NFL. That's not a lot to go on. There are obvious concerns. There's the throw that he made in week 1 that shattered the internet. All of those outcomes are kind of on the Anthony Richardson chart. I'm interested to see how they handle that. Saying that Joe Flacco is your QB of the season is kind of nuts to me, but I don't know. I will have to come back to you on that because I haven't given enough thought. My immediate gut reaction is I would probably keep Anthony Richardson if I had him, but I wouldn't blame anybody for taking Penix. I totally get the logic there. That's so tough.
It's a tough one. The chat is all in on Michael Penix.
As you should be. Good player.
Or as I like to call him, Michael Penix. I think the people get it. They get it. But yeah, based on the chat, Anthony Richardson, woo! They're not a fan. They are not a fan. Wow. I mean, they really. I mean, I didn't expect this. I did not expect it. I thought this would be 50-50. I mean, I hope that Evan Ringler is not listening to this. Evan Ringler is a massive Anthony Richardson fan. He is definitely giving Anthony Richardson the benefit of the doubt generally, and he is the human that is the custodian of the player profiler AI engine, lifetime value generator. He's got to listen to the show, and he's got to hear from the people because they're not good. All right, so we still have a few days until the trade deadline. It's November 5th. We've got some players that could be traded. Most of them are wide receivers. There is a running back, though. There's a running back that I think we all know. Put it in the chat again if you can guess who the running back we're going to talk. We're going to talk about one running back. We're going to get that out of the way first. We're definitely going to talk about the running back first because that's the most interesting to me. And then there's some wide receivers that could be on the move. One of them was thought to be on the move, but I don't think is going to be on the move anymore. We'll talk about it. And then there's a few other fringy wide receivers that could be moved. But what about Khalil Herbert? Khalil Herbert, a game day inactive. He belongs on an active roster. He should be a handcuff back to somebody around the league. I mean, how he isn't already a Chief, I don't know, because Kareem Hunt is a ticking time bomb. There's a few running backs in the league. Kyron Williams, James Cook, Kareem Hunt, undersized running backs that are taking on a huge workload. Kareem Hunt is bigger than those guys, but he's also way less efficient and has a difficult time avoiding contact at this point in his career. So these running backs are all ticking time bombs. Eventually, Kansas City is going to want to get more out of their running back. And I know that Isaiah Pacheco is supposed to return, but I would not be surprised if Isaiah Pacheco experiences a straight-up lost season, that we don't see him again. If your backup running back, the only running back that got any carries other than the starter last week for Kansas City, or the last week they played, Carson Steele was the only other running back besides Kareem Hunt to get a carry, and he has a notorious fumbling problem. Why isn't Khalil Herbert a Chief at this point?
I would expect that he probably gets moved before the deadline. Casey's one of the many destinations I think he can go because I think the price tag is going to be pretty cheap. I would assume it's a late day 3 pick, maybe a conditional swap of like a 6th and a 7th, headed somewhere else. Because essentially, once you make a player a game day inactive and you're like, look, we're just shipping you out for whatever we can get at this point.
His contract's expiring. Like, this is perfect. The other option is what, Dallas? Dallas just signed Dalvin Cook.
Why is Dallas going to be a buyer at this point?
Well, the chat seems to think it's going to be Dallas.
Okay, let's say it is Dallas. That just furthers our initiative here. Dallas is not a serious football team right now. Like, trading for a running back, given the position that they're in, is remarkably unserious. You brought back Zeke, hoping that he had something left. Dalvin Cook. I mean, it's just every year we go through this with Dallas, post Zeke leaving town. Every year we go through this with Dallas. They're trying to fix the run game. They're trying to reestablish what they had in 2016. Forget about it, dude. That era is gone. You're relying on Dak to carry the offense at this point. He should be a Chief. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a Cowboy because that's a very Jerry Jones move. But if it's up to me, if I'm holding all the strings, he's a Kansas City Chief for sure.
Dalvin Cook has been elevated to the active roster. I think that the Cowboys made their decision. They decided to go with Cook. Their one last job for Dalvin Cook. I think they made that decision. I don't think that they are going to make another move. Yeah. I don't think that Samaje Perine and Kareem Hunt are the final moves in Kansas City. So it's who else? Who else could possibly acquire Khalil Herbert? Let's give one more name, one more team.
I think Cincinnati's in that mix for sure. I don't know that they love, long-term Chase Brown there.
I think they are missing that player. Chase Brown's undersized and he struggles in pass protection. And Khalil Herbert is a professional football player with juice, where Zach Moss doesn't have juice.
Yeah,
but
I'm not a Zach Moss guy.
Does Cincinnati make trade deadline moves ever?
No,
I feel like really. They're not that team.
No, but I'm saying if it's up to me, if I get a say in it.
Okay, if you get a say, that's fine. But let's say you would. Yes, I would love it too. I think that would be a great spot. One team that could actually make the move?
Chargers
would make sense.
I don't think anybody's talking about the Chargers. And I mean, what the health issues for a J.K. Dobbins and a Gus Edwards look like. Having one more there certainly wouldn't hurt.
How can they not do this? The Chargers are competing this year. The Chargers are 4-3, but they have a plus 41 point differential, which is near the top of the AFC. All the teams in the AFC with the best point differentials are in the AFC West, with the exception of Pittsburgh and Buffalo. So if you just look at point differential, they're a top 5 team in the AFC. And they have very few weaknesses. They have one of the most talent-rich offensive lines, young but super talented. We know they have a talented defense that can never stay healthy. The one need they really have is running back. Why not?
Yeah, I kind of love the idea that he slots in next to Dobbins and next to Gus Edwards and, just helps. It's not like you have to ask all three of them to carry the ball, 15 times each a game, but you can have a game where you give Khalil Herbert 20 carries. You'll be totally fine.
They have the cap space. They have $7 million of cap space. Yeah. And Khalil Herbert's a day 3 pick. He's the perfect running back to trade for.
It's ugly for fantasy purposes, but for real life purposes, I freaking love that move.
I don't think it's ugly for fantasy purposes. I just think we pivot from Kamani Vidal as the handcuff to Khalil Herbert.
Yeah.
I don't think, and J.K. Dobbins also a ticking time bomb. That's just a straight up injury time bomb. That's just an injury history time bomb. Some of these guys is injury history plus their size. Some of them it's their size plus their workload is problematic. Some of them it's their inefficiency. That's how you become like a top 5 time bomb running back. So yeah, the top 5 time bomb running backs are J.K. Dobbins, Kareem Hunt, James Cook, Kyron Williams, and then let me know in the chat who number 5 is. Who should number 5 be? Who is the number 5 time bomb running back? I don't know who it is. Now, at wide receiver, there were talks about Cooper Kupp, right? This was the Adam Schefters talking about Cooper Kupp. But the Rams won, so I think that they're going to reach the trade deadline being too close to contention, right?
Yeah, I mean they're half game back in the division at 3-4. They were going to be sellers, I think, if they had gone to 2-5, because I think that's just a little bit too deep a hole to climb out of. I don't expect him to be moved. I don't expect Stafford to be moved. But if they had lost last Thursday night, I think that conversation would be a little bit different.
I can't imagine Cooper Kupp on a different team.
Me either, man.
That is the weirdest thing. I mean, think about all the players around the league. This is another thing you put in the chat, in the comments. Let us know the player who you can least see in a different uniform. It was weird to see Brady in a different uniform.
That was very strange,
right? I mean, that's not Brady level different uniform. But yeah, it's always interesting. Some players you couldn't imagine it, and partly that's because they never switched teams. Like, was Lawrence Taylor ever on a different team?
I don't know.
I don't think he was.
Once a Giant, always a Giant, I think.
Yeah, I don't think he ever was. That would have been weird. That would have been weird. But okay. Not going to happen. So Cooper Kupp not going to be traded because they're only a game back. Darius Slayton, he's on the move.
Yeah, I mean, that's not. I mean, across the board, I feel bad for everyone in that organization because they're tied to Daniel Jones. But yeah, he's got to be moved.
If there's one wide receiver that is moved before the deadline, it is Darius Slayton. That's the highest probability of all of them.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
Yeah. And no one cares where he goes. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Oh, we have our fifth. We have our number 5 time bomb running back, and he's probably ranked higher than that. I think if I was ranking them, this guy would be near the top, and that's Devon Achane.
Oh, boy.
They are giving him too many touches, too many carries between the 20s for an undersized running back with an injury history. I love him as a player, but these are the facts, right? Mm-hmm. I love the value I'm getting for J.K. Dobbins. Loved drafting J.K. Dobbins. Loved it over Gus Edwards easily, right? Much better draft pick in fantasy football than Gus Edwards, but every game you get from J.K. Dobbins is a blessing at this point.
Yeah.
This is just free money. Right, they were just free rolling the rest of the way, and you know it. You have to know it. Everyone that has a running back on this list, this time bomb list, everything you're getting from Kareem Hunt is gravy from here on out. But these 5 players, Achane, Williams, Hunt, Cook, Dobbins, time bombs. Time bomb, time bombs, time bombs. Why do the Browns want to keep Jerry Jeudy around at this point if they have Tillman? Tillman has stepped up. Tillman, a close comp to Nico Collins. 3rd round pick, big-bodied, was muted production in college, especially his final year. And that's what happened to Nico Collins at Michigan. It's very similar career arc. He really doesn't start to do anything until year 2, but really breaks out in year 3. Cedric Tillman very much on the Nico Collins career path. You have the reemergence of Elijah Moore. What the hell is the point? There's still a little bit of brand equity left with Jerry Jeudy. Why not just get what you can for him?
I think a big part of it was the Jeudy move was brought in, I think, to make, honestly, Watson looked somewhat decent, and obviously that wasn't the case and not what happened. But, I mean, you could absolutely ship him out to somebody that's willing to pay for the name and for the brand equity from his time at Bama. There's nothing he's done in the league suggests that he should fetch the prices that he's going to fetch on the market.
Isn't that true for Calvin Ridley too? Like, if you're the Titans, what is the point? If you're going to be rolling out Mason Rudolph, why do you need any starting receivers? Why not just see what you got? See what you got with these young players. I don't even know who's behind Calvin Ridley on the depth chart. We should look at it together. We're going to find out together who the Titans have, and whoever it is, I say just let them go out and try to make some plays. Let Tyler Boyd make plays. Let Nick Westbrook-Akine
Matt
make
wants
plays.
Nick Westbrook-Akine to be their wide receiver one.
They have a player named Jaquan Jackson.
Jaquan Jackson's fun, man.
They have Jaquan Jackson. Let Jaquan Jackson go out there and do something. Let's see what we've got in Jaquan Jackson. What's the point? An NFL team will absolutely trade you something. A conditional day 3 pick for Calvin Ridley. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it.
They paid him a lot of money too.
Is that the reason they can't get rid of him?
It's going to be tough. I mean, you're going to have to find a contender that's willing to eat that money.
Is Traylon Burks out for the year?
Is he?
Let's see. We're going to find this out together.
Is he coming back or is he? I can't remember. Why am I blank?
No, he suffered a knee injury in practice, and he was ruled out. But he's not on IR.
So he'll be back.
Right?
Yeah. Remember the baby AJ?
Oh, no, he is on IR. Okay, wait. Burks suffered a knee injury and was ruled out, but then was also then placed on injured reserve. I don't know if he's going to come back this year or not. I don't know if anyone knows if he's coming back this year or not. All I know is Traylon Burks is one of the great bust receivers of my lifetime.
I'm sad for Titans fans, man. You have to watch Derrick Henry walk out the door. Will Levis is piloting your franchise, and he's more popular for memes and his ex-girlfriend than he is for playing quarterback. You've got Calvin Ridley, who's supposed to come in and fix your passing offense. That hasn't worked. Tough time to be a Titans fan, man. Those poor people.
Let's go, Jaquan Jackson.
SFB legend, man. He's a return guy, too.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.